All right, let's talk about what was going on at that time. This is let's just start with the decade of the '70s. It was almost dominated by three teams, certainly as far as the Stanley Cups go, right? I mean, it was Boston, Montreal, and Philadelphia.
Well, Philly had gone, we'd taken care of them, but we couldn't take care of Montreal. Montreal had 11 guys, believe it or not, make the Hall of Fame. I mean, their first line was Schutt, had 60 goals. Lemaire had, the center was at 35 goals, and Lafleur had 52 goals on the other side. If you get by him, you get Robinson, Savard, and then you get, but it was tough. They only lost one game at home, but we beat them at home. So
I'm thinking about the style of hockey. Before we talk about the specific team of '77, '78, the style of hockey, remind the fans of what the game was like at that time.
Well, you know, you watched us play. I mean, I'll just say Terry O'Reilly. Again, I said 200 minutes in penalties, led our team in scoring. Winsink had 200 minutes in penalties, and San Jonathan had 200. So we had one guy had 18 fights. That was Terry O'Reilly. So you can imagine the people in Boston. They just loved it. You know what I mean? We were tougher in Philly. Philly was supposed to be the Broad Street Bullies, and they couldn't match us. So we had the toughest team, I think, in sports.
You had just played in the final against Montreal the year before. Didn't go well as far as, games 4-0, right? Yeah. But, I mean, you're coming in with high expectations, I would assume. But you're only a 500 team, really, the first month of the season.
We had a tough time at the start. We were bringing guys in, and we got rolling at the end. And a lot of people don't know that year, Montreal, believe it or not, only lost 8 games all year. And we played them 5 times. We beat them 3. They only lost 1 game at home, and we were the one that beat them at home. But what happened was when we got into a 7-game series with them, they had such depth, and that's what happened. But what a team. That was the greatest team ever.
The way the playoffs were set up, Boston could play Montreal in the final, which isn't available today.
Yeah.
But that must have been awesome.
You couldn't believe it. I know people, it's big hockey, but back in those days, that was a glamour club. Like Montreal, I can't describe Montreal, maybe New York Yankees at the Bronx, the top. And we were like the underdogs, and everybody, all the people in Nova Scotia and people like that in Boston, they all liked us. And I always had us like us against the world. And we almost did it. If we'd ever got by them, it was a piece of cake. And but it was so bad with Scotty Bowman and I going back at each other that John Ziegler, the president, had a meeting. It was right here in Boston. He had a meeting that you have to stop. And we got fined at the end and the whole deal. But it was colorful. It was fun. And we had the papers, boy, the papers, they loved us here in Boston. We had a grand time.
If you could watch a game from any era, pick any exciting game, probably a playoff game, a game that you could watch from any era, what's the era that most fascinated you?
You know, it's a funny thing you say that. Ty Domi, when he played for the Leafs, they came in late one night. And you know how everybody is on the same floor if you're late. The players are they always have the door open and they're walking in shorts and that. Well, our game, that 7th game, was on television, and it was all. And Ty said they couldn't believe the speed and the hitting and everything in that game. They all had them on watching, and I think that was a great, unfortunately bad ending for me. But I think that era right there was tough. We could score. They had personalities and the whole deal. Had great coaches too, but. I would say the middle of the 70s.
I remember one time when we met, it was probably the 2nd or 3rd time we sat down and chatted, just socially, in a club, and you told me a story one time, and this is what I want to end on. You told me a story one time about coming back from the West Coast, and you walked to the back of the plane. You flew commercial in those days, and you said you walked up, and it was Terry O'Reilly and John Wensink, and they were playing chess, which I thought was funny to begin with.
Yeah,
and then you said they were both too scared to cheat.
No, yeah, and they wouldn't cheat one another.